So, welcome back. So, we are going to continue our discussion on scope for change. You remember we talked about the different kind of changes that happen in the organization, and that is where we talked about structural changes, system related changes, technology related changes, culture related changes, people related changes, right. So, when we are talking about these kind of changes, it does not going to affect just a part of that, right. What I am trying to say that when you go about change in your strategy, you also need to bring about a change in your culture, right. When you go about a change in your strategy, you also need to go about a change in your structure, because structural changes are an outcome of what you call strategic changes. So, what we are going to see that when we are going to bring about certain changes, whether it is related to incremental changes or transformational changes, how this alignment could be done in a more effective way, so that we are more productive and effective. So, first of all we will talk about the strategies which is carried out for plant changes. You know, the plant changes are mostly directed by the top management, right. So, the top management decides that yes, we need to go for certain changes. Okay. So, all such changes are known as plant changes. So, the kind of change that is to be there is to be decided by the top management. How they would go about it, that is decided. They communicate it down the line, okay, we need to go for these kind of changes, right. Now, these changes could be related to either incremental changes, where you go for continuous changes, or it could be related to what you call transformational changes. Now, apart from these two kind of changes which we have dealt with extensively, we have to see that what is the mode of bringing about these changes, whether it is related to incremental or whether it is related to transformational changes. Now, if you look at this, it talks about two kind of changes, that is collaborative mode and coercive mode. Collaborative mode means where people cooperate, stakeholders cooperate with each other, whether it is related to incremental or transformational changes. Coercive mode means where people are forced to go for these kind of changes, right. You may be threatened if you do not go for these kind of changes, or you do not accept these kind of changes, right. So, where you use threat as a mode to bring about certain changes in the organization, any kind of change, system, structure, policy, technology, then that is known as collaborative mode and coercive mode. And when we are talking about collaborative mode, that is more participative, where you expect all the stakeholders of the change process to participate in the activities to make it successful. Now, if you look at these two dimensions of incremental and transformational change, and accordingly the collaborative and coercive mode that we have explained, we bring about four kind of changes, right. One is where you participate to evaluate the kind of change that you want to bring, that is participative evaluation, right. Most of the incremental changes, when it is done in collaborative mode, right, is participative evaluation. What happens in this kind of evaluation? Organization is doing well, but it needs to bring about certain adjustments. So, you go bit by bit bringing about certain changes, right. So, organization is doing very well, but it also brings minor adjustments, so that it continues to do very well, right. And even if it is not fit, it has enough time to bring about certain changes, right. But similarly, if you are going into a coercive mode, it means that yes, organization is doing well, it is fit and needs some kind of adjustment, but what actually happens? The mode that is used is more coercive. You basically force people to go for these kind of changes. So, in one case you allow participation of the stakeholders of the change process, and in either case basically you force people. So, it is more top down. Okay. So, where you dictate terms and you ask them to go for it, right. So, that is force distribution. Similarly, when you go for radical or more transformational changes, it means that here basically you the charisma of the leader works. So, they are so much impressed, the people are impressed by the charismatic characteristics of the leaders. So, that they think okay, whatever the leader is saying is correct and let us go by that without thinking about it. So, they participate actively without thinking any outcome, and this is what you know as charismatic transformation. The best example of this kind of charismatic transformation I can give is like when Mahatma Gandhi, who was a charismatic leader, right. When he tried to transform certain things, say any activity that he took up, people followed him without questioning or without reasoning that why he wants to go that for it, because people believed in him. So, they went for it, right. So, things were not doing well, but best people go for these kind of things, right, because there is no time for allowing people to ask their opinion, ask them to collaborate. But the idea is that yes, we need to go for it and let us go for it, right. But in case of coercive mood, what actually happens? It becomes more dictatorial, right, because organization things are not working well in the organization. So, but you do not think that yes, people need to participate in these activities. So, you go for radical changes for survival. So, the best example I can give is this kind of transformation when Indira Gandhi tried to bring about structural changes in the system and the structure of the governance by imposing emergency. So, it was a kind of dictatorial transformation that she wanted to bring to make the corrections at the organizational level, that is the country, right. So, discussing about these 4 kind of transformations, see what actually happens. So, these are the 4 possible change strategies, right. In participative, yes, you need to create a culture of collaboration, so that you are successful. In charismatic transformation, right, you have created such a culture, so that even if you are going for radical changes, people accept it. Forced evolution, what happens? You make some incremental adjustments without waiting, without support of the culture, without support of the people, and you ask them to accept it as it is, right. And in dictatorial transformations, right, it is used in times of crisis like emergency, which was considered as crisis period. And then major restructuring ran counter to internal culture. So, there were a lot of opposition from the people, the attitude and values of the people were different, and they did not expect this kind of thing to come out, right, in terms of in the form of emergency, right. So, any kind of restructuring that the government want to bring in the governance of the country was suffering, because the internal culture was not in tune with what the government or the leadership had accepted, right. So, this with moving these 4 change strategies, we will talk about an integrated strategic change. What are the key features? It means that you need to see that when you want to bring about any kind of change, how it can integrate better with other systems of the organization, right. So, if you want to bring about a change in cultures, do you expect this to be aligned with what you call culture, technology and structure? So, if there is a better integration, then you can say yes, it is going to be more effective. So, any kind of deliberate coordinated process, we are going to see that all of them are in tune, right, which leads to radically systematic realignments between what? The environment, the strategy. So, whether your strategy has come out as a result of the environmental scanning, whether a structure is as a result of what we call the strategy of the organization or not, right. So, basic objective of this realignment between environment and strategy, or environment then strategy and then structure and then people or technology and the culture, whether it would be resulting in improved performance or effectiveness of or not, it depends upon how integrated these strategic changes are. It means that the extent to which they have been realigned with each other, right. So, you need to ensure that there is a fine tuning between all the components of the various parts of the organization in terms of structure, strategy, culture, technology and people, so that it provide better results. Now, moving further, what we are going to see that what is the strategic orientation. So, first point is that what is the strategy of the organization. Say for example, if the company want to go for say mergers or acquisitions, or it wants to go for say joint ventures, right. So, under these strategies you are going to develop a plan, right, and how this mergers acquisitions that you want to go for is going to be realigned with other parts of the organization, right. Whether this kind of action plan, right, strategic plan that you have been thinking about is going to bring about a change in the structure, the culture, the technology and the people related issues of the organization or not, right. So, how are you going to integrate them into the process so that it is effective? Let me give one example of say mergers and acquisitions, right. So, your strategic orientation is basically aimed at integration, so that you have better market share, right. You are not going to be dependent on resources. So, you have purchased a company, right. See, most of the big companies, what they do, they keep on acquiring small companies, so that they are not going to be resource dependent on them. So, the best example that you can take up of this Tata when they acquired ArcelorMittal. The basic objective of acquiring Arcelor by Tata was to have more markets or new markets, right. So, they acquired this company, they created a strategic plan, but what actually happens, they did not go for integration into the processes, the individual undergo processes. Ultimately, what happened? As a result, this kind of acquisition did not succeed, right. So, the Tata is not in a position to understand what is to be done with this acquired company, because there are a lot of adjustments that need to be made in terms of the culture, reward system, HR policies, right, was actually went into haywire. So, they were not able to understand what to do with that. So, they were not, the idea was that they were not able to integrate various processes dealing with people and related issues, and that is why this kind of mergers and acquisitions did not succeed. So, what I am trying to make you understand is that you need to integrate and align everything together, so that any kind of strategic change is going to be more successful. See, what is the process? Now, let us look at this. This talks about two things. One, strategy S1, and then there is a change in the strategy, that is S2, right. So, you have one strategy earlier, now you have gone for a change in the strategy, right. Now, you need to become a different organization. So, earlier you are known as organization 1, O1, and then after implementing that strategy, you will be called say organization 2. So, at the first phase, you are going to analyze your strategic requirement based upon the analysis of the environment, that what kind of a strategy you want to have for your organization, right. Once you are able to understand and identify the kind of a strategy that you want to make use of, so to go for a change. So, for example, you want to adopt a strategy related to pricing, or suppose you have a strategy to offer a new product in the market, right. So, you go for a new product development, right. You think that the existing product is not successful, so you need to offer a new product which could be much better in terms of its features, okay, and through which you can compete in the market, right. So, based on your strategic analysis, you think about coming out with a new product. So, you implement this change plan. It means that you need to invest on this, right. You need to come out with new product, and for that you have to go for new product development, right. Once you have implemented and you have come out with new product, so you are going to offer to the people, that is your next strategy, that you are going to compete on the basis of differentiation. So, differentiation is strategy that you are adopting here by offering a product which is new in the market and which can better compete because of its features in the market. Now, with this new product development, you are going to offer a new product which is a part of what we call strategic 2, right. So, now you have a strategic choice. The strategic choice is that you are going to compete with a new product development. You are not going to be focused, or you are not going to use pricing as a strategy. So, you look at different alternatives which you have at the strategic level, which help you to compete in the market, right. It could be based on pricing, it could be based on say you offering a unique product, right, or focusing on a particular segment of the market, right. So, there are different kind of strategies which are available, or whether to go for mergers, acquisitions, joint ventures or strategic alliances. So, you decide about how you go about it, right. So, based on this, once you implement a strategy and you see that whether your strategic choice is successful or not. But in order to ensure that this strategic choice is successful, how it is aligned with other thing. Like if you go for a new product development, it means that you need to bring about a change in the production process, that is technology, right. You also need to invest more in training and development, so that people are ready to work with the new technology, right. So, you need to align your new product development strategy with other systems and processes of the organization. If that does not happen, it is not going to be successful, right. And that is why we go for integrated strategic change process. So, what are the things that need to be done? First, whether you have to see whether you are really ready to go for a new change, and see what is your current strategic orientation, and based on your current strategy you have to see whether you want to go for a change in your strategy, right. Say if you have been competing on the basis of pricing. Now, you know that there is a level playing field on the pricing front. It means everybody is offering similar products on the similar price. So, now your pricing strategy is not successful, right. Now, if you look at aviation sector, most of the airlines offer similar products or services, you can say, at similar prices. So, pricing strategy is not successful. Now, if pricing strategy is not successful, then you need to look at other strategy. You can think about focused markets, I mean on those segments of the market or customers on which you want to focus upon, or you can think about offering new products or new services, right. So, whether this strategic choice is going to be successful or not, and why you want to go for this kind of a strategy, right. So, the top management actually decides what could be the change in the strategy, right. Say for example, when Reliance Jio offered a new service, which was almost a new kind of product in the market, because others were not having this kind of product. So, with this was a strategic choice by Reliance Jio to provide better service to the customers at a lower cost, with the objective to improve their market share, right, and have a more customer base, right. So, once you decide about your strategic choice, then you go for it. How this is going to bring about changes in other parts of the system and structure. So, whether you have a technology, whether there is a support in terms of structure and culture of the people in the organization to implement these kind of changes or not, right. So, when you design the strategic change plan, you need to see that what is to be done, and accordingly you implement a strategic change, and if you are able to align and tune other systems and processes with your strategy, then you will be in a better position to implement the strategic plan and more successful. Otherwise, what will happen? Your change program is not going to be successful, right. So, the idea is that if you want to bring about any strategic change, first you look at your current strategy, why you need to go for a change, which strategy is going to be more successful and effective, and if you want to implement that particular strategy for change, how it is going to be aligned with other parts of the organization, other systems of the organization, right. So, the nature of alignment is going to decide how successfully you are going to implement that particular strategy, right. Now, moving further, see how it is affected, right. Now, this talks about the environment factor, how stable or unstable the environment is, that you come to know about analysis. This is known as PEST analysis, right. Political, economic, social and technical, socio-cultural and technical environment, that is known as PESTEL analysis, right. So, once this PESTEL analysis is done to identify the level of stability or instability which is available in the environment, accordingly you are going to decide about a strategy, right, your technology, your size. Now, see, this environment is also going to influence the culture. Environment is also going to define about the structure, but that is one thing. Now, you see that you need to create a better alignment between your strategy, technology, culture and structure. So, your culture structure need to be aligned, your culture and strategy need to be aligned, right. So, you have to see that when you are to bring about any change, say for example, you want to bring about any structural changes, need to ensure that there is a better cultural alignment. It means with the structure people are ready to accept it. So, you are going to create a new norm and value system for the organization. Now, you need to ensure that people are ready to follow it, right, which is a part of the culture, right, which has come from where? The strategy. So, the strategy which has come out of this environment need to be aligned with what you call the culture and other related issues like creativity, the kind of politics that is there, leadership, right. Then you also need to see that yes, your structure is also aligned with this one, So, if this is not there, then what will happen? You cannot think about a strategic change, integrated strategic change. It means you need to ensure that your environment, strategy, culture and structure, everything is aligned with each other, right. That is the point which I wanted to make here, right. For example, we have taken up that case of Reliance Jio. See what actually happens. They analyze the environment, they could find that okay, if they go for this kind of strategy, it is going to be creating more market share for them. In order to develop this, they develop software, they develop technologies. Size was another important factor. They had the size also with them, size which is measured in terms of financial strength, not only the number of people. So, they had the strength. Now, they wanted to what they need to do is they wanted to bring about a change in the culture of the organization. So, that this kind of strategy is going to be more successful, and accordingly they dealt with politics of the organization, the leadership was supportive, and they also ensured that there is a better alignment within the structure of the organization and culture to support the kind of strategy that they had. So, that they could meet the challenges of the environment, right, in order to succeed in a market which were more or less stagnated, right. Now, others have also started following the same suit. So, this is not a strategy on which the Reliance can rely upon. Why? Because all major telecom players have gone for the similar strategy. They have been able to bring about a change in the strategy, and they are offering similar products and services what Jio has been offering today. So, now this is not going to create a you can say a better market for the Jio. So, Jio has to think about something new, a new strategy. So, the strategic choices has to be decided based upon the environmental analysis, which also include your competitors, and see that how you can go for a more integrated alignment among the factors, so that any change is more acceptable and successful. Look at this. So, you go for a better strategic fit between these factors. So, we are talking about organizational strategy. It means this strategy must be in tune with the structure, right. Remember, when we are talking about a strategy, that is the action plan of the organization, right, and this strategy could be developed at what? The unit level, the corporate level, even in the industry level also, even at the department level they can have their different strategy. Like production department can define their own strategy to meet the targets, marketing department can have their own strategy to see that how they are going to sell their product, right. HR department can have their own strategy that how they are going to contribute to the organization, how they are going to recruit people, how they are going to design performance based systems to link with the reward. So, each department might be having its own strategy in the organization. So, this is what we call a department level strategy. Then moving to the organization level strategy. So, each organization will have its own strategy, right. So, what I am talking about here is that you need to see that there is a better strategic fit between the structure and the strategy of the organization, right. So, when you are going to design an organization, you need to keep these four core factors, right. One is what kind of communication system you have, both manual as well as technical, like nowadays people are using IT based systems, that is management and information systems. A basic objective of having this system is to provide feedback and also acting as a control system to see and that how well we have been progressing. Then looking at the structure, what kind of structure you have, structure in terms of what is the degree of formalization, centralization, okay, levels in the hierarchy, number of the departments, and that is how you create a structure, right. It could be a function based, it could be a product based, it could be a division based. Similarly, how the work is being done, the design, okay, the job is being designed, how much autonomy and say freedom you provide to the people, whether people are allowed to use their skills or not. So, all these factors are related to what you call the job design. Now, if you look at all these factors, they must be in congruence with each other, so that the structure that you have is better aligned with what you call the strategy. So, you can have a better strategic fit only when these elements of the structure are aligned and in tune with what you call the strategy of the organization, right. Now, moving further, we will discuss some other things. See how structure is aligned with the strategy, work design, HR and MIS. Look at the example. See, most of the structure could be either classified as a mechanistic structure. Taller structures are mostly mechanistic, than flatter structures, which are called basically organic structures, right. Now, if you look at on these dimensions of structure, so what kind of alignment is required? Say when it comes to strategy, what is the objective of mechanistic structure? To produce on a mass basis, right. So, you go for a mass based production system. The objective is to be more cost effective, so minimize the cost. But in an organic system, your strategy is to go for more and more innovations, right. So, you can offer different kind of products using your production system, right. Then structure, here it is more hierarchical functional structure, here you are going to have more flat, lean or flexible structure, it could be matrix or process based, even a network structure, right. So, see how the structure is changing depending upon the strategy, right. So, if you want to go for market orientation, then your structure should be different, right. Similarly, the work design is going to be different, right. You need to go for better job designing, enriched jobs, and here you can go for traditional work arrangements. Now, when it comes to HR fit, here we are talking about person job fit. It means you need to ensure that yes, person know how to perform a particular job, and here we are not going for person job fit. The concept has entirely changed. We go for person organization fit. You need to ensure that through regular training, people are ready to work with any kind of requirement that an organization has. So, you need to ensure that people have those capabilities which is required for the organization, not for a particular job. So, that is the change in the concept when you move from a person job fit to what you call a person organization fit. Then coming to the MIS, basically here MIS is being used as a command and control function, and here it is used to engage employees to have better, inclusive and more distributed information. So, MIS is used to create awareness among the people that what is happening, to give them a feedback system. So, it is used as a feedback system, and here it is being used as a control system. Now, you can see that this alignment is very important between the strategy, HR, work design and MIS, and that is why we have been talking about an integrated strategic change. So, any integrated strategic change, you need to ensure that these parameters are aligned with each other, right. In this case, you have seen that how structural changes brings about a change in the strategy or design or the HR system of the organization, right. So, when we are talking about the design part, when we talk about the structural change in the organizations, so you have to see that why you want to go for change in your design, right. Whether you want to have a mechanistic structure, whether you want to go for an organic structure, the idea is that why you want to go for it and whether it is followed by the strategy or not. So, first you need to look at your strategy and then accordingly you decide what kind of structure you have or you should have, right, not the otherwise. Do not think about a structure first and then you talk about the strategy, because structure follows a strategy, it is not strategy follows a structure, right. So, you have to say that first you decide about your strategy to start with, decide what is your objective, and then in order to achieve those strategies, what kind of capabilities would be required by the organization, right. And then depending upon that, at the next stage you see that what kind of design you want to have, okay. What could be the various components, right. It means what could be various departments, what could be various levels, how the jobs are going to be distributed along people, right. So, in what way you are going to create better coordination both vertically and horizontally to ensure that the objectives of the organization is achieved, and that is why you are going to design the organization. So, you need to ensure that this design is going to meeting the requirement of the strategy, right, and then you go put the new structure in place, so that it is going to help the organization to achieve its goals and objectives. So, implement the design. So, first you look at the strategy, go for the structure and then put the new structure in place, practices and systems, right. Moving further, so we have talked about a strategy structure fit, now we are talking about a strategy and culture fit. You also need to ensure that any strategic changes bring about a change in the culture, right. For example, when you are talking about strategy culture fit, you have to ensure that when you are going to take any course of action to achieve an objective, how cultural changes is going to enable it in the process of achieving those objectives. So, culture is a very important factor. So, when we are talking about a strategy culture fit, we need to ensure that how it is to be done. See, we need to create a matrix, okay, and there are 4 basic alternatives. First is managing change. You need to ensure that any changes you need to understand and tell that yes, if you bring about a change in strategy, it also engages certain risks, and if culture is compatible with this, you will be able to manage the risk and bring effective changes. So, culture reinforcement is used as a strategy. You try to reinforcement the kind of culture that is required. It means that you want to implement that kind of structure which will be helpful. Then where employees have developed that kind of culture, it means that they have a vision and shared values, then the risk is very less. It means that you have a better mix between the strategy and the culture, right. And then when you are managing around culture, it means you want to bring about a change in the culture which is not compatible with the strategy, and that is where you need to bring about a change in the value system, right. Otherwise, it is not going to be successful. And finally, you need to ensure that your change strategy is fitting to the culture, right, because you do not want to accept any kind of risk, right. Because if you want to bring about a change and culture is not compatible, then you need to bring about a change in culture, right, so that it is going to help you. Now, look at this figure, right. So, on this side you can see it talks about the need for strategic changes, and this side it talks about compatibility of change, right. And if there is less compatibility, no less need for change, it means you can go for a change in strategy, it is going to go right. But if there is high compatibility, then and there is less need for change, you need to reinforce the new culture or bring about a change in the culture. But here, if you look at here, there is low compatibility and high need, then definitely you need to manage the culture. If you are not able to bring about a change in the culture of the organization, it is not going to be successful, right. And here compatibility is high, but also the need for strategic changes. So, you need to manage the change, because culture is reinforcing already. So, culture is not an issue, right, but you need to go for a change. So, you need to ensure that you are going to effectively implement the change, because there is support for the culture, right. So, this is related to what you call a strategy culture mix. Now, how you can go about designing culture in the organization? There are different approaches, right. Designing patterns of behavior, like you can use artifacts, okay, rituals, norms, while these are part of the culture. There is a competing value approach and also deep assumptions, which are very largely inside the people of the organization. So, what we are going to discuss now, these different approaches, starting with the behavioral approach, competing value approach, and also the deep assumptions approach, right. So, look at the competing value approach. What does it talk about? Now, you can see it talks about the internal focus and integration. It means here you are talking about what? Improving efficiency of the system or the organization, and here you are talking about the market orientation, external focus and differentiation. Now, on these dimensions you have two things: stability and control and flexibility and discretion. How stable the system is and how flexible the system is, right. Based on that, you have created 4 different kind of culture, which is related to structure. Now, here you see that this talks about hierarchy. What does it mean? It talks about a bureaucratic culture. Bureaucratic culture is found in those organizations which are more or less stable, with the better control, stable, but they focus on more on internal efficiency, right. Now, the market oriented culture basically talks about where the stability is less, more flexibility on this side, but you want to compete in the market. So, you do not want to create a more bureaucratic culture, but you move away from bureaucratic culture to a more market oriented culture, right. Now, if you look at this here, you have more flexibility with what? High integration, right. What actually happens? you are more reactive in your approach, right. So, this is what we call adhocracy. So, you take ad hoc decisions, which is not good, because in this case you may not be successful. Then finally, we have a client culture, right. Client culture, where you want to improve efficiency, where there is a high stability, right. So, client culture is also good, because here everybody shares the same value, like in family you have a client culture, because everybody think alike, everybody share the same kind of value system, right. So, you need to create this kind of culture or this kind of culture in order to successful. This is something that is not desirable in terms of culture, right. And that is why if you look at this competing value approach, it talks about what? The values, emphasis characterizing the organization, how it resolves a set of value dilemmas. So, basically you need to follow this kind of culture, either a client oriented or market oriented culture, in order to succeed in the market, right. And this is more adaptable and compatible with what you call the strategy. This talks about the strategy, this talks about the efficiency factor, right, and that is what the competing value approach is. Now, how we go about it? So, when you want to basically relate culture and strategy, it is that first you identify what is your strategy, the commitment of top management is required, then see what kind of cultural change would be required, right. So, whether you are moving from a bureaucratic culture, the hierarchy culture, to a client oriented culture or market oriented culture, right. It depends upon what is your strategy, whether it is market focused or internal efficiency, right. And then accordingly you bring about a change in the organization. It means that you also need to bring about a change in the design of the organization, that is the structure part. So, if you want to bring about a change in the structure part, I am talking about this fourth point, modify the organization. That means that modify the design of the organization. For example, if you are moving to a say market oriented culture, then the bureaucratic culture, which is more mechanistic, is not appropriate. So, you need to move to a more organic structure, right. So, organic structure better supports a marketing culture, marketing oriented culture, right. And then anybody who joins the organization, right, they need to be trained in that particular culture, because once you are a part of the system, you become insider from an outsider, right. So, you need to also espouse the same kind of value system, right, same kind of attitude and values, and share similar norms and values, so that you also follow the similar culture, so that the culture that you have is strong, right. There could be some deviance in terms of downsizing and these kind of things, because the deviate people start to follow the culture, so that you need to take care. And then you also make people sensitive about the ethical issues, the legal issues which may come up, because you want to bring about certain changes, right. So, you need to make people aware about it, make sure that these kind of events less affect the people, their motivation as a newcomer, right. Otherwise, you will not be able to develop a strong culture, and accordingly you modify your structure, move from a bureaucratic or mechanistic structure to more organic structure, and see that now we are talking about alignment between not only the strategy and culture, but also the structure. So, strategy, culture and structure, all these three need to be aligned with each other. See here, I have taken certain examples of cultural changes. What actually happens, right? These kind of cultural changes, like these related to rituals which organizations follow. One ritual is known as rites of passage, right, where you bring about a change in the status of the role. For example, new role in a training program, right. Rites of enhancement, what is that? Recognize efforts benefiting organizations, right, which motivate others. Example is you are creating award ceremonies. So, you create award ceremonies, it is the kind of ritual that you follow, but that also promotes culture in the organization, rights of renewal, right, reassure that something is being done, right, the focus on issues. Here, yes, you appoint a consultant to look into those issues, right, of integration, right. Whether there is a shared commitment, right, reassert rightness of the norms. So, here you celebrate achievements, right, or the new way of doing things. So, that because you got successful, so you want to celebrate it, right. So, if these kind of things are done to promote a strong culture in the organization, then it is always good. That actually helps the organization to significantly bring about a change in the culture, so that people share similar norms and values, right. So, these cultural changes actually are or should be, you can say, in tune with structure of the organization, because structural support must be there, and ultimately you need to ensure that it is going to help the organization to achieve its goals and objectives. For example, if you look at these changes, these examples which is done to manage change, basically promote a different kind of culture, so that people share similar norms and values. So, that culture becomes strong, right. So, these kind of cultural values actually reinforce people to help them to achieve the goals and objectives of the organization, right. And that is why it is very important to ensure that how you are going to promote cultural changes in the organization, what kind of systems and practices you are going to follow, so that it is going to help the organization to achieve that. Thank you very much.